What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my first college football video. In this one, we're going to be talking about where I'm ranking every single team heading into the season. And in this one, it's going to be 134 all the way to 26. And then my next video will be the top 25 in my rankings. So let's get into it. 134 to 125. You get your bottom feeders here. You have Kennesaw State coming in last. Last year going 1 and 11. And Kent State was the only team last year as well to go 1 and 11. So it's pretty expected to have these teams down here. Um, it's just tough sledding for all these teams in the future for 134 to 126. New Mexico State, I'm not sure if that's right. That might be a mistypo on my part, but 10 and 5 doesn't seem right. But nonetheless, they're down here for a reason. They must have lost a ton of talent, some coaches, if they did go 10 and 5. But UMass, they're always going to be down here next year. Going into next year, they'll be moving into the MAC actually. So maybe there'll be some better chances at some wins there. But, these teams have tough sledding ahead of them. And hopefully, these teams are just shooting for a bowl game. Like those teams, same boat for these teams from 124 to 115. They're just hoping for a bowl game. I mean, you got UConn, who's been historically bad. Nevada off of really bad year last year, which is kind of rare from them. Normally they're a 500 or better team. And I think a team to look out for here in this one is going to be Georgia State. They are pretty low, but it seems like they always put together around a 500 year. They're pretty solid. And then you got Louisiana Tech, Ball State, New Mexico, Middle Tennessee, FIU, Central Michigan, and San Jose State. So all these teams round out 124 through 115. Not much to be said about these teams, as like I said, they're just hoping for a bowl game. 114 to 105. And now this is where you find some teams that, coming off of some down years, and I think they could be poised for a better year. Those teams are all the teams in the MAC, honestly. I think Eastern Ohio, Western, Bowling Green, and Northern Illinois. All those teams could be better, and I expect them to be at least 500. Ohio had a really good year last year, but they lost a lot. That's why they're this far down. But we have other teams like Houston State, Southern Miss, Tulsa, UAB, and Navy, the midshipmen. All these guys, you're hoping for 500 seasons. That's what you got to root for when you're down here to go to a bowl game. And I expect UAB. I think UAB could be a very solid program. They just, time in, time out after getting their program reinstated, they've started to slowly progress and get back to being what they used to be, a little better. And I think this year could be a big step forward for them. Navy, they just got to win the Army Navy game. It feels like they haven't won that in forever, at least from my understanding. I don't think they've won it in a little while. I think whatever. I can't remember if they won it last year, the year before, but before that, it's been a while. And then you got Tulsa. Tulsa's been a solid football team the last few years until last year. They struggled. But these teams, like I said, still trying to get to a bowl game. And then you got four teams here: Georgia Southern, Old Dominion, North Texas, and Marshall. They're in the same boat as all those other teams. And you got 100 through 91. And I think you could make the case that one of these teams could possibly make a run and be really good. Looking at Coastal Carolina or Troy, obviously after last year's stats, but Coastal Carolina lost their quarterback, Grayson McCall. So they're going to be replacing a lot. And Troy, they're going to lose a lot when you aren't a Power Four team. A lot of those guys are going to move to a Power Four school. And I think these teams are capable of getting to a bowl game. They just got to push it to the next step. Now, 90 through 81, you get your first SEC team here, and it's going to be Vandy. Obviously, Vandy is the worst football team in the SEC. It's no doubt about it. It's unfortunate as is, but they're just going to struggle to compete. They don't have enough talent on that roster to compete with all those big dogs in the SEC. But you do have a good team in the MAC in Toledo. 11 and 3 in the MAC is a very good year, and who knows at this point next year that could even be good enough for a college football playoff berth if you are the conference champion, the fifth conference champion. You never know where that could end up. Jacksonville State put together a solid year. Wyoming, James Madison as well. So, these teams are the sneaky teams that are coming off of a good year, besides Vanderbilt, of course. 80 through 71. You get some teams here with some higher expectations than last year, some down years, especially with Purdue, Cincinnati. I think that was kind of expected. They got to be better this year, or else there's going to be some big changes there. Miami of Ohio, another MAC team, another solid year, 11-3 last year. He kind of came out of nowhere. Don't think they were the favorites last year, but they played some really good football towards the end of the year. And then Duke, I think Duke could have a really good year this year, even with replacing Riley Leonard. I think Duke could be very good in the ACC because that division or conference is up for grabs. Now, 70 through 61, you get some Big Ten teams here, some ACC teams, Big 12 teams. You get a little bit of everything here. Starting with Indiana at 70. Right now they're at the bottom of the barrel here in the Big Ten, along with Northwestern and Illinois. The Big Ten added some big teams with Oregon and Washington, USC and UCLA coming over, and it's just going to get worse for those teams at the bottom already. Same for the ACC teams. Wake Forest, they had a few good years with Sam Hartman, but then fell to below 500 last year, and it showed that Sam Hartman was a really good quarterback. You got Arizona State, BYU, and Baylor out of the Big 12. These teams looking to fight for a bowl game. I think Baylor has a case to possibly pull off some upsets this year. That roster could be really good if, things fall into place. Pitt, once Kenny Pickett left, they really haven't established themselves as anything in the last 2 years. The Mississippi State, with Mike Leach, passing away last year and all they had to go through. Maybe this year, they'll play with heavy hearts for him this year as they go into a full year, knowing what the situation is. Now, 60 through 51, here's some teams that I think can make a case for a top 25 ranking when it's all said and done at the end of the year. And that team I'm looking at is Michigan State and Syracuse. I think Michigan State, hiring a new head coach, bringing in Aiden Childs, pretty much bringing in a lot of new talent from Oregon State. I think Michigan State could be a really good team. I'm not saying 10-2, nothing crazy, but I think they could definitely make the case to flip those two numbers and possibly go 8-4 this year. Syracuse as well, getting Kyle McCord after Ohio State pretty much threw him away for nothing. I think McCord could have a really good year and get the Syracuse team possibly 8-4 as well. And another team to look out for is Tulane. In the last few years, they've always been really good. Ever since 2021, they've been really solid. And Tulane, they seem to do it year in and year out, post a 10-win season, and I expect it to continue here for them. But you have Cal, UCLA, UTSA, Boston College, and USF rounding it out. 50 through 41. Now, you can already look at 41 and say 14-1 team falling all the way to 41. Yeah, that's what's going to happen here to Washington heading into the year. Lost Penix, lost their running back, lost their whole receiving room, lost their head coach, DeBoer, to Alabama. And, they got a huge rebuild going. Oh, yeah, and they also joined probably 1A/1B, the best conference in college football in the Big Ten. It's going to be rough sledding for Washington in their first year, but I don't expect them to fall off really hard. But the 14-1 season, I do not expect that at all. Some other Big Ten teams here. You got Rutgers and Maryland. They're fighting for 8-4, 9-3, and I think Maryland has a case to do it. With Tua's brother, they got a chance, and I think as long as he stays healthy, or sorry, he's gone. Sorry, now he's gone. And if Maryland can figure out consistent quarterback play, that's what I was going to say. If Maryland can figure out consistent quarterback play, that team is not a bad team. They just need the quarterback to be consistent enough to put them in positions to win. The Big 12, adding Colorado and TCU, Texas Tech, and I think UCF is now in the Big 12 as well. So you got 4 teams here in the Big 12. I don't know what you're going to do, but one of these teams is either going to be really good, or one of those teams is going to be really bad. And I think obviously on paper, Colorado has the team to be really good. I'm not saying make the playoff, but 4-8, I think they can be at least a 500 ball club, possibly even better. That goes for TCU, Texas Tech, UCF. They all have that chance, but it's just how they play those games in the conference against the middle of the conference determines their season. And that goes for Georgia Tech and North Carolina out of the ACC. I think North Carolina, after losing Drake May, is going to be tough, and Tez Walker. But, North Carolina, they lost Trubisky and they stayed relevant. They've lost a few quarterbacks over the years, and they've stayed really relevant around that 8-4 mark. And I expect them to do so again. Now, 40 through 31. This is where you make the case where maybe a few of these teams could be ranked a little higher. And I'm looking at, maybe Florida, maybe Liberty, maybe Kentucky. The SEC teams obviously get the benefit of the doubt playing in a tough conference. Same with Big Ten teams in Nebraska and Wisconsin. I don't know. I just think all these teams right now are just a big coin flip to put them wherever from 40 to 26. Honestly, Because you can see those records last year weren't too pretty besides Memphis and Liberty. But, those obviously are in weaker conference, easier schedules. But I still think Memphis and Liberty could be very good. App State is a team as well to look out for. Since their transition to FBS, they have been above 500 both years, and I expect to continue this year. Now, 30 through 26, here are teams that you can make the case could have been in the top 25. USC especially, I know they are ranked in the AP poll to start out with, but I don't really see the hype in USC after losing, the best quarterback goes #1 pick in the draft. It's tough to replace that. It always is. And I know you have Lincoln Riley as a head coach, but you can only do so much with the talent you have on the roster. And oh yeah, you're also moving to the Big Ten, and you went 8-4 last year in the Pac-12 with pretty much Oregon and Washington dominating that conference last year. I think USC is in for a rough year, and Lincoln Riley might be fired. I just say that because, it's just tough sledding. It's just tough sledding for USC. They really haven't been relevant since Reggie Bush era, and I don't think they're ever going to get back there, at least right now, under Lincoln Riley. I think Iowa State has a case to be really good this year. Time in and time out, they put together one year where they're 10-2 going into a bowl game, or 9-3. Last year, 6-6, won their bowl game, finished 7-6. So it was a successful year technically, but I think Iowa State has the chance to take this to the next level, along with teams like SMU, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. That week 1 game for West Virginia against Penn State at home, if you get that win, yeah, you're probably jumping into my top 25, no matter if everybody else wins, just because you get that week 1 win against a ranked opponent, you always got to get that. You always got to get that, and that's going to make your season here. And that's why I think, West Virginia is right on the outside of the top 25, but with a win, they'll definitely be sliding in. But that's going to be it for my preseason power rankings. Check back later this week to see my top 25 before this weekend's games on Saturday. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.